Schwartz might go to the square. No, he goes for the pass, and it's good to Green. He's closer to goal this time.
Steve Phoebe's away then, running down towards half forward. They need some marking forwards. Green has been the best of them. And he's marked it again. Well,
He stands with a margin at 15. And now it's reduced. What a kick from the young Brad Green.
Comes out to Bruce. He's over the ball. Green surrounded. Very slick. Mansfield kicks into a teammate this time. It comes back to Green. He snaps and he's fourth. But I think he's got it. 4 since half time.
Our guest tonight kicked 350 goals in 254 games with the Demons over 12 seasons, making his debut in early 2000. His career got off to a flying start, and he lived out every boy's dream later that season when he virtually won a final off his own boot against the Blues. He kicked 55 goals during a stellar 2010 year, a season in which he won the Keith Bluey Truscott Trophy as the club's best and fairest. He captained the Demons the following year. I'm talking, of course, about Brad Green. Greenie, welcome to the Demonland podcast.
Good evening. How you going, guys?
Yeah, we're good, Brad. Brad, it was a career with many highs and a few lows thrown in there too. Let's start with one of the real high points, at least in our eyes as supporters. Well, we just heard now the qualifying final against Carlton in your debut year. The game looked lost at three-quarter time. Take us through that final quarter and describe the emotions you experienced as it unfolded.
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind. I still remember sort of making my debut in it was round 2 in 2000 against the Kangas on Friday night footy. If you remember round 1, I think we got beaten by Richmond. I think it was round 1 that year, and going throughout the year, you're nervous in keeping your spot. Back then, don't worry about 90 rotations, let alone 20. So I sat on the bench quite a fair bit for Dennis. And it was the same in that Carlton final. I don't remember really playing much of the first half of that game, and coming on in the second half trying to stem the flow in certainly a big game for the footy club. And it was a bit surreal in the way it's all happened. And you think back on what you sort of did on the day, and you really think, geez, it was a bit of a fluke, really. I couldn't imagine doing it again and trying to do it again, but it was an amazing day. I still remember going into the last quarter, the noise of, so I remember 75 there, and it was certainly louder than grand final day. So, it was fond memories, and certainly something that I cherish, and one of the games that you look back upon over your career and go, you can certainly think back on. It was one of the true games that you had a big impact in.
Cameron Bruce was the other star that day. Your careers obviously took place over the same period, and from that afternoon, at least in supporters' eyes, you were basically intertwined ever since. Were you good mates off the field? And how was it having your careers going through together like that?
Yeah, we were. Well, we are, and we were. We were both in each other's bridal party at each other's weddings. So, yeah, we're great mates and still great mates today. But, getting drafted in the same year as Cam and socialising, playing golf and sort of coming through at the same time, and playing in the same side and sort of in the same area. We're great mates and still great mates today. So it's even more special when you can cherish those moments with close friends.
Yep. We've asked the same question of Jeff White and Robbo. What were your expectations going into the grand final that year? Did you think we were a realistic chance of knocking off the Bombers, who were almost undefeated?
I've been a brash 18-year-old thinking that, he's made a good AFL footy. I've made a grand final my first year. I thought we could beat King Kong that day. Didn't matter who we were coming up against. I thought we could take the game out. When you're looking, I still remember, I think it was round 11, round 12, when Carlton beat us by 120-odd points that year in 2000, and we didn't lose a game. And when you're looking at going through a season, we were certainly down in certain stages towards the end of the year, and would get back up and win. But certainly the Bombers, when you look back at their side and the names that they had, all superstars in their side, but we were still confident, very confident going into the game. But it was a bit of a kick down when you see the end result. There's no doubt about that. It was a bad loss in the end, but certainly confident going into the day.
Yep.
It was a bit of a dirty day all round. It almost became life-threatening day for you. You copped a nasty whack in the throat in the first quarter. Is it true that you couldn't breathe because of the swelling and you had to be put on oxygen?
Yeah. So what happened? People keep thinking it was basically the Dean Wallace punch in the face that did it, but that didn't actually hurt me. It was the first bounce of the day. Whitey hit the tap. I come off the centre forward and was charging. Dean Wallace picked the ball up and he raised his elbow to sort of fend me, and his elbow went straight into my larynx. And throughout the first quarter, it started swelling and started sort of compressing together. And quarter time, I said to the doc, I can't breathe, and they sent me down to the change rooms and put me on oxygen. And basically, they were ready to do a trachea, so they were ready to punch a hole in the throat to release, and ended up in hospital that night. But it was sort of fine in a couple of days after that. But it wasn't a nice way to sort of end your grand final day only playing a quarter. But it was one of those things that happens in footy.
After making the granny in your first year, did you think that the team was headed for a sustained period of success, considering the other draftees that had come through with you, such as Cam and Matty Whelan and others?
Yeah, I really thought, and we probably, the side that we had was certainly wasn't the most talented side during that sort of 2000 2005 period, but the cohesion and the gel that we had and the mateship that we had for each other was certainly terrific bond, and we went on a bit of a roller coaster there for a number of years, up and down, and that consistency wasn't good enough, and that probably we got overwhelmed by talent in the end. But for a number of years, we'll sort of hedging top four for most of the year, and then we always lose a couple of crucial games towards the end of the year, which sort of knocked us down a couple of pegs. But I thought we were always confident and never threatened by a lot of sides, but back then there were some amazing teams. You look back at the Essendons and the Brisbanes when they went through their three-peat. Certainly strong sides coming through, and we thought we were good enough at different stages, but certainly in the end we probably weren't consistent enough.
Brad, it must have been fun playing in that forward line with Nita, Schwartz, the Wiz, Robbo, Bruce, and yourself. There's quite a bit of talent in there.
Yeah, there was. When you're looking at playing against the Wiz, you don't know what he was going to do every game he played, but what exceptional talent. It was amazing playing alongside him. Robbo, you didn't know if Robbo was going to sit on your head or knee in the back, and same with Nita. I played a lot of footy with Nita and next to him, and playing with those, and even Schwarter, Cam Bruce. It was certainly a multi-talented forward line that we looked to challenge our opponents. But great fun. We had great fun playing that down there, and they were certainly talented.
You played a lot of footy in the midfield as well as spending a lot of time up forward. Everyone loves kicking a goal, of course. What was your preference if you had one?
I used to, basically I reckoned through the period of about 06 to certainly 2011, I reckon I was basically 50-50 of going sort of midfield, wing, forward, and I loved the flexibility that we had during that, and I certainly enjoyed getting up the ground because it can be a bit of a groundhog day in the forward line. Tough conditions, not getting a kick, getting up around the ball, trying to work it that way, getting back in defence, taking marks, and doing what you can, getting around stoppages. So I preferred sort of the 50-50 split of both playing sort of midfield and forward, which was good.
Brad, you had a pretty good conversion rate, you in front of goal. Is that something you'd always been part of your game, or did you have to work on that to become a sharpshooter?
It was something I certainly always worked on. I would, have 100 shots a week at training. Even on my day off, I'd go down to my local ground and still practice kicking. So it was something you certainly had to work on, but it's certainly something that hasn't changed in modern footy. You get frustrated why they can't kick straight and different things, and there's all different circumstances why they can't. But I believe it was always it's a massive mind thing. Goal kicking, it's a fair bit mental. Yeah, you got to have good technique and the ability to kick fairly well, but if you can get the mind right, and I was always confident no matter where I was inside 50 that I could kick it, and that was half the battle, I thought.
Yeah. Another feature of your game, especially playing up forward in later seasons, saw you risking life and limb by backing into packs or holding your ground as a defender came flying at you from behind. During those moments, do you ever think to yourself, I'm in trouble here, this is going to hurt?
No, I used to always think the moment I think that is when I probably did get hurt.
Right.
The moments where you think that you're just going to go for this ball, it would end up that you'll find the majority of the time. And deep down, you always wanted to do that and be seen to be setting the scene and doing the tough things when they needed to be done, and certainly that was one feature of my game that I pride myself to be able to go back with the flow of the ball and take a strong contested mark. So you don't want to let people down by not doing that, and I always had that in the back of my mind that if I was going to go, I was fully committed to going.
Yep.
You were given the captaincy in 2011 after James McDonald retired, and you've described being named captain as a surreal experience. What did you mean by that? And looking back, what did it mean for you to lead the oldest footy club in the world?
Yeah, it was certainly a great honour. I think surreal meaning for me is you never go into any footy club thinking that one day you're going to captain. You go through early stages in your career and you want to get picked, and then you want to stay in the side, and captaincy was certainly wasn't a big aspiration of mine. And then you eventually get into the leadership group, you start setting the scene, and you're working your way up, and then all of a sudden the captaincy sort of, I was an elder statesman with a young side, and basically I didn't try to change who I was. A lot of it was leading by example, but trying to teach the young guys, the standards of training, being trying to create a great culture that would sustain for a long period of time, and that's all I meant by that. Because it shouldn't change the person that you are. It just means you got to do a few more things.
Greenie, after playing finals regularly in the early part of your career, dark days came to the club after Neil Danaher finished up. How hard was it during those times, especially, in your final season when virtually all hope had sort of been extinguished?
Yeah, there's certainly some trying moments. The club was going through different stages where, I was coming towards the end and we were trying to win as many games as possible, and we butted heads a little bit during all that trying period. And yeah, it was certainly, I think, supporters felt it, players felt it, admin people felt it. We all felt it, that it was wasn't a great period in our career. But I felt, when Dean came in at the start of 08. 08 to when he did, I thought...
07, I think, yeah.
07 was his first year.
Yep.
I thought Bales was certainly, after Neil, I thought Bales was a terrific coach. I thought seriously that he was ahead of the game in the way he taught us offense. People thought that he didn't teach us defense, but he wanted to create a brand of footy that would bring supporters to the game, two, be an exciting side. And when we had players like Liam Jarrah and Austin Wanamiri and Aaron Davey, I still remember the game. And if you remember that, by 80-odd points. And it was certainly a really young side, and we were playing terrific footy. And, to see him get sacked was certainly hard to deal with. So through that period, I thought we were building something. I reckon that was one of the worst decisions the club could have ever made, was getting rid of Dean Bailey. There's no doubt in my mind that he was the right man to take the club, to its next premiership. And in the end, it's sort of, unfortunately, he's still not here with us. But it was certainly a poor decision by the club getting rid of him. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, it was dark days. My last year of footy under Mark Neild wasn't great, and it was probably the right circumstances that I had to sort of step away really and let the club sort of go in a new direction and a new future really. That's sort of how it panned out, and sort of you would love to be Shane Crawford in 08 and walk away with a flag, but it wasn't my time, and it was something that you can say that it was the right time to step away and let someone else take over and sort of take it in a new direction.
Brad, was it a kick in the guts when Mark Neild came in and replaced you as captain, or is that just one you have to cop on the chin and move on?
No, it wasn't a kick in the guts. I questioned why we were putting a couple of young kids into a position of certainly those roles. I asked the process on how they did it. I questioned that. But it was certainly, there was no disappointment. I was full support behind Grimesy and Watsy. There's no doubt I was right behind them. It was just, to put that much pressure on a couple of young kids when they're only starting their careers, and thinking that it was the right decision. In hindsight's a funny thing, but at the time it was certainly, I wouldn't have made that decision doing it that way. It certainly was. I asked a couple of questions why it was going down that path. And then that's just me being a senior player on what direction they were trying to take, and that's the direction they wanted to take. We were doing it with youth, and that's what they saw the direction forward that way.
Well, Paul Roos agrees with you. We interviewed him last week, and he labelled that decision as being ludicrous. So you're in pretty good company there.
Yeah. When you're talking of positions of not power, but when you're trying to create cultures and create good clubs, good strong clubs don't make decisions on a whim, and I just felt for them more than anything. It had nothing to do with me. I was still a player, I was still a senior player to get out there and lead. It was just more I was trying to support them when they didn't really, they didn't really know their own game. They had to cement their own spots, their own form, get that into order before you give positions of power like that. And, I still reckon it hurt their careers, no doubt.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think you'd be the Lone Ranger there. You mentioned Dean Bailey a moment ago. How close were you with him, I suppose, off-field, away from footy, and how hard was his passing 4 years ago?
Yeah, we're very close. The communication that you've got to have between a captain and a coach is quite high on most clubs, on the communication that, the coach doesn't know everything that's happening in the playing group, and the captain sort of, and the leadership group do. There's always questions to be asked, seeing how we're going. He certainly asks us, how do we play on the weekend? Can we change training? How are the boys feeling? Are we tired? And I think that's an ongoing conversation, and great cultures that coach and player relationship and captain relationship and leadership relationship needs to happen. And good clubs do it. And Dean was certainly one of those guys. And he was a bit of a guy that you could turn around to and have a conversation, always constantly asking how my family was and vice versa. So, yeah, we did have a great relationship. And sad, the passing of him, and you just feel deeply sorrow for Karen and the boys that he's got. So, yeah, it was a tough time. It was certainly a coach that should never have lost his job.
Brad, I won't ask the obvious question that everyone always asks you, so I'll phrase it this way. Are you sick of every interview you've ever had asking you about your training with Manchester United?
It's certainly one of the questions that I get asked probably 100% of the time. And being the World Cup that's on at the moment, keeping an eye on that. But it was a part of my life that happened, and one that I'll cherish, and something that I did. And it was a part of my life that was a terrific opportunity, and it was great.
These things have a habit of taking on a life of their own, and I think in some circles people probably said that you were just not far off, kicking a winner in a Champions League final. You were that good. You're also a pretty talented junior cricketer and basketballer. How close were you to committing yourself to a sport other than footy?
Yeah, it was basically draft day, 99, November 99. I came over to Melbourne for the draft, and I basically, the week leading into the draft, I had a cricket contract to go to the Adelaide Cricket Academy and work under Rod Marsh. So basically what was going to happen, I was going to get drafted, and that was my number one priority. And if it didn't happen in 99, I was going next day, jump on a plane to Adelaide and go to the Cricket Academy. So it's amazing sort of how it all pans out. If I sort of had it in my mind, if one decision didn't go my way, I had another already to go. So I loved my cricket. I was a batter and left-hander. I don't regret. AFL was certainly the game that I loved playing, and still wish I could.
After your playing career, you were an assistant coach at both Carlton and North. Did you enjoy your time as a coach, and is that something you may continue to pursue in the future?
Yeah, I loved it. It was I think the closest thing you get to playing is coaching. You still feel a part of a team culture, team aspect, but there's nothing like running out on game day as a player. But the ability on game day and feeling that you get when you win and lose is still the same feeling.
Yeah.
On when you're sitting in the coach's box, you just can't have a physical influence on the game. We coaches still have massive influence on game, and probably too much. Now I'm out of the coaching, I can say that. They have too much influence on the game and the way they structure up, rather than let players play a little bit. But it's something that I stepped away at the end of last year, and in the back of my mind, I never wanted to be a senior coach. I had 5 years being an assistant coach at two great clubs, working under Mick at Carlton and then Brad Scott at North. It was something that I'll cherish, because I love the opportunity working at different clubs and seeing how they operate, seeing how players go about their business, and trying to teach players was very rewarding, and see that happen on game day. So down the track, I certainly don't see myself being an AFL senior coach. Would I get back into coaching at some point in life? Yeah, maybe, because I've got a passion for the AFL game, and that might be local or it might be back in AFL land, but I won't be going anywhere. I still love the game, and I'm enjoying taking my two boys and sitting in the outer and having a beer and a pie, cheering on the D's this year. It's been great fun.
I noticed that you played most of your career as a forward and a midfielder, but I noticed at North you were the defensive coach. How does that come? I've seen a few assistant coaches who didn't play in a certain position sort of take the opposite line as a coach. How does that come about? Yeah,
it was certainly an opportunity that Brad said, we want you to coach the back line, and I think modern day coaching is a bit like man managing structures and game plans and a process, rather than teaching them I don't need to teach Robbie Tarrant and Scott Thompson and Michael Ferrito how to defend one-on-one, because they're pretty good. Yeah. So with those guys I'm working, I had a pretty core senior guys down there. You're looking at Damien McMillan and Luke McDonald, Sam Wright. So I had a pretty core group of talented players that knew how to play defence. It was teaching them more to how to play in our structure and the way we wanted to play, and working with them as people, trying to get the best out of them and communicating them that way. I think coaching is all about sort of teaching and helping them and having empathy about the player themselves. And that's getting them out there and trying to get the best out of them. So rather than teaching Robbie Tarrant, who probably should be an All-Australian defender, at one-on-one, very rarely would I say, "What are you doing there, Robbie? What technique did you have?" Because I got no idea how to defend. He would teach me. So, yeah, it's certainly more about the process, the structure, and our style that we... And team defence is a very big part of the defensive systems and coaches' role that they need to do. So it's a bigger picture rather than an individual style on how do you go about it.
Greenie, we've got one final question for you, and we are very grateful for your time. There's been a lot of discussion about the future of footy in Tasmania and the health of the state league there. What do you think needs to happen to reinvigorate the game? Does there need to be a standalone team, a standalone Tasmanian team in the AFL?
Yeah, I've been pretty passionate when I saw what was sort of happening over the last couple of years, that, you know, the state wasn't producing any talented juniors and getting drafted, that something needs to happen. And speaking to a lot of Tasmanians, and I'm down there a fair bit still because I've got family and friends and go and watch a lot of local footy, that things need to change. And it's a good thing that it's come to head. It's probably been too long, and the AFL just thought that we'll keep sort of coasting along. But we're not doing enough down there in AFL funding, and the AFL actually putting and investing some time into it. They haven't been good enough. I think the biggest call that they need to do is get back into it and have a Tassie Mariners team, which I came through, a team that's playing in the TAC Cup in under-18 system. Look at their full development programs down there. They're under-18s through to, you know, under-10s, working on their coaching and structures and the way that their talent pathways is the biggest area I see that they need to change as first point of call. You know, statewide footy has certainly been down in the standard that the guys are playing is not great standard, but I still think it's viable if they work hard and invest. Getting their own AFL team, I haven't been on the team of they definitely need one. I think over time they deserve one. There's no doubt they deserve one, but can I see it working? Yeah, it probably work better than Gold Coast and GWS, but it's never going to happen with the investment of TV rights and the power of the regions that Gold Coast and GWS are in. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to money and TV rights and all that. Do I think they deserve it? Yeah, they do. You know, an AFL team in Tassie sounds right to me, but can I think it will happen? I don't ever think it will happen in the next little bit, but over time, I reckon, you know, they should have a team.
Greenie, before I let you go, you mentioned you got two boys. How far off are they from donning the boots for the D's?
Yeah, I've got Oliver's 8, and my youngest boy Wilbur's 5. So both passionate Melbourne boys. Ollie even cried last Queen's birthday, which I did too.
So did I.
In the loss. But yeah, he's passionate, D's man, which is great. Just seeing, you know, your boy so emotionally invested in a team. Yeah, he loves the boys. I think his favourite players are Jesse Hogan and Jonesy, and still trying to tell him that Dad actually played with Jonesy. Still can't get that through to him, but he's he loves it. It's great thing to see a boy be passionate about a club that he played for. So yeah, he's 8 and he loves his footy, so which is all good.
Great. Well,
good stuff.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Brad. We really appreciate it. And yeah, go D's, and thank you very much.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.